Yeah. Well, hello. I am figuring out how technology works, and hopefully it is. I did some test runs with my mom, so a big shout out to Kelly Williams. And I am here with a very, very special guest, the one and only Billy West. You may know him as Fry from Futurama, the professor from Futurama, Zoidberg from Futurama, Zap Brannigan from Futurama, about 40 other characters from Futurama, Ren
I'm
and
sick of
Stimpy. What?
I'm sick of me.
Are you? Okay, well, we can stop this part. You want to talk about me instead?
No, it'll be a long drum roll.
Yeah, the red M&M. I'll just keep going. Doug,
Mhm.
Roger Klotz, Pork Chop. The list goes on. If you don't recognize his face, you've heard his voice at some point in your life. And not only that, but isn't it true that you went to Berkeley School of Music?
Yes, it is true.
See, that's a really
In
cool thing.
1970, I went there. I only stayed for let's see. I think I stayed for like one semester
Okay.
because
That's like me.
I
I
wanted,
stayed for one semester.
yeah,
Yeah, in college. Not at Berkeley, but yeah.
I wanted to be out playing.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't want to be stuck somewhere learning about how to play. I just wanted to go do it.
Yeah. That's exactly how I felt. I can definitely relate to that. But I think that it's very interesting that you did get into Berkeley because, first of all, I mean, that's a huge accomplishment for anyone who's not familiar with that school. I mean, that's a huge, huge deal. And especially for a young musician, if I'm not mistaken, music was really your first love, right? Before anything
Yeah,
cartoon ever was a thought in your mind. That's kind of how it began for you, right?
I think it was always about music originally, and it was really about sound,
Yeah.
of any type. Um, I um, I liked I would vibrate, I would oscillate, when I heard certain sounds. And when I first heard rock and roll was invented like maybe a year or two before I was born,
Right.
and there wasn't much of it on the radio, as I recall. When we were growing up, there was songs like "All Day, All Night, Marianne" by Harry Belafonte. There was "Come On to My House" by Rosemary Clooney. There was "The Wayward Wind" by Gogi Grant. But it wasn't like Happy Days, like where you turn on the radio and there was Chuck Berry, or you turn on the radio, there was, Bill Haley, or um, uh, you know, um, trying to think of the guy's name. But I mean, rock and roll wasn't pervasive like
Yeah.
you would imagine it was in the 50s. It was pretty tame, the radio. And then there were a couple of stations that if you scrounged around, you could find R&B. My mom hit upon something. It never even occurred to us to change the station on the radio. It
Yeah.
just sat there, and it was on a station. And if you liked it, that was it. You didn't mess with it.
Yeah. Satisfied.
Yeah.
I think it's fantastic. You're an incredible guitar player, and I think it's so interesting that you had this connection with sound. Do you remember the first time you felt like you wanted to pick up a guitar and start doing that?
I I remember seeing there was a guitar in my house in Detroit when I was very, very young. It was one of those old, Sears sold um, models for home enjoyment.
Yeah.
A lot of people just made their own entertainment in those days.
Yeah.
They'd sit around, sing. Somebody would play piano. But we had a Sears guitar. It was like a silver tone or something like that. And I saw my dad holding it and playing a few things with it. And I wanted to get my hands on it, but it was always put away. And I was really, really young. And then one time I found it in the basement when we moved to a house. I found it in the basement and I started trying to do something with it, but I got frustrated. I don't know why I'm all choked up today.
That's okay.
It's Memorial Day.
Everyone
My
I've talked to
Memorial
in
Day.
LA. Yeah, it's the Memorial Day. It's the I almost made a very dark joke, but I'm gonna restrain myself.
Yes,
Yeah, but I think in LA,
best
the
to.
allergies are getting to everybody. That's like, after the rain, I know when I just moved here like a month and a half ago, and when I got here, I was like stuffed up and congested and more than usual for like a few weeks.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
it's awful.
it's weird, it's strange.
It's weird. The weather's been so odd recently, but that's not what this is about. Um,
No,
it could be, but it's not. Um, it's so fascinating to me the trajectory that you had because so you got your hands on a guitar and was it an instant love affair? Was it like a spark where you just knew that this was the thing for you, or what was the beginning
no,
point
you know
of
what?
that? No.
I played trumpet. I was in the school band,
Okay, I
and
played trumpet too.
oh my goodness. So they asked the kids, they showed us instruments and they said, "What would you like to play?" And I liked the way that brass looked under the lights, and so I was attracted to that. But they didn't have a trumpet; they had what they call a flugelhorn. Uh,
Yeah, I'm
it
familiar.
was a cornet.
Yep,
Yeah, cornet, and had a mellower sound, and it was more compact than a trumpet.
yep.
So I settled for that. And then I really wanted to get somewhere with it. It sounded good when I played with other people. Then one summer, it was summer vacation, and the valves started to get sticky. They stuck, and I couldn't press them down eventually. And I got all pissed off about it. And I just took the thing and slammed it onto the arm of the couch, banging it to see if I could get them to go up and down. And then it would be easy to play. But the thing was a mess, and I had to bring it to school in the fall. And the music teacher looked at it, and he's unscrewing the valves, and the screws were all threaded and crimped, And he said, "Somebody's been banging and banging this thing," and I just was like furtive, I didn't know what to say, and he looked at me and he said, "Do you know what valve oil is?" I said, "No."
No,
They
that,
didn't tell you. They didn't tell you.
I think I had not a very dissimilar experience with my trumpet. I don't think it was treated much better. And I think this is fascinating to me. I actually quite thrilled that we share this experience of playing trumpet in the school band. And I think I was in elementary school.
Yes.
Yeah, elementary. Yeah, exactly. Because for those who don't know, which is everyone who's watching this pretty much, Billy and I met at a convention last weekend, and we bonded over our neuroses, our shared neuroses, and our shared wackiness, and all of these things. And this just goes to show there's like this. I think there's this magnetic thread among certain people, and
Yes.
yeah, I really feel that there is. And I feel what's so fascinating to me is how you described loving music and the sound being what drew you in, because if we're gonna go all over the place, and I want to talk about your time on the Stern Show, of course, but fast forward to cartoon land. I mean, as a voice actor myself, I can say to everyone who's listening who's less familiar with that kind of work, it is extremely musical. And if you ask anyone who does it for a living, that's it. There's a rhythm. There's a cadence. There's a musicality to that kind of performance that and it's acting, but there's a layer on top
Mm-hmm.
of that, and I'm sure you must feel the same way.
I feel that um, it helps a performer that's going to voice act if you latch on to cadences and melodies and peaks and valleys of a voice,
Yeah.
and not just a character voice, but I mean, you could take any recording of a person like, say, John F. Kennedy, and his cadence was like, "We chose to go to the moon not because it was easy, but because it was hard."
Yeah.
And it was like da 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 da, and that was the top of his voice, and it was sort of monotony, but a lot of orators speak in that fashion.
Yeah.
I guess
Yeah.
it's to put it across better.
It's very interesting because there is if you go to pretty much any cartoon, and I do feel that these days things are a little bit more grounded, and they're trying to find people who just sound a little bit more like an on-camera performance for a lot of the more serialized shows. But certainly with what I grew up with, every character had a rhythm. Every character had their own musical timbre, and a lot of them
Yes,
were impressions of John F. Kennedy or Jimmy Stewart or all of these people, that references that I didn't understand as a 6-year-old, and then you grow up and realize that
sure.
it's all stolen and appropriated and warped and morphed. And
Yeah,
it's such a fascinating world. Would you mind sharing quickly uh your experience learning to do Popeye? Because I think that is, if we're talking about sound and music and how all of that blends into cartoons, that I think is the most fascinating example possible.
it's so funny. I went to a Fleischer um, festival the other night. It was at the Hayworth Theater, the Hayworth Typewriter Dynasty Theater, that has a lot of names, but it's this nifty little theater. And Jane Fleischer was there, and my friend Paul Dini from Batman.
Oh yeah,
He
of course.
created Harley, and yeah, and Matt Groening was with us, and
Wow.
we watched the Fleischer cartoon. And I've maintained this for years, that everything that a cartoon lover could want is in a Betty Boop cartoon or a
I agree.
Popeye
I agree.
cartoon. And
Yeah.
so, and the voice originally in 1932, I think it was done by, there was a drummer named Billy Costello, and he had this freak voice that he used to do. He could do women, and he could do just crazy things with his voice. And they used him. Fleischer Brothers used him for their character Popeye, and he was great. He was great. It was almost like oh God, it was just so unusual. And he was a lout. I guess he was a drunken lout, and he was farting higher than his ass. He got too big for his britches, and he was impossible to deal with. And so they got rid of him, but they didn't know what the hell to do. But in their midst, at the Fleischer Brothers Studios, was an animator, an in-betweener by the name of Jack Mercer. And he would entertain his coworkers with his version of Popeye. And so they got a hold of him, and he became the voice that everyone knows.
What
This
a
was,
story.
I think, by 1936. I think by 1936 he was the permanent voice that we know forever.
Yeah.
Which was I went to a movie theater with my friend Tony Visconti. He used to produce David Bowie's records,
Wow.
and it was about Tuvan throat singers, and we were watching, and it was just so strange. These guys, they were almost like Mongolian cowboys
Yeah,
in the country
exactly.
called Tuva, which is above Mongolia, I guess. And they had a horse beat culture, which was like our country western music. But they would go to sing, and it wouldn't be like, My Darling Clementine. It would be some pitch that they would produce, and then became it became pentatonic whistles and low buzzes that were um, they were like oh God, harmonics
Yeah.
with jumping out of the tones they were producing, and it was otherworldly. And then at one point I said, "Oh my God!" I had a revelation. It was like an epiphany. This is how Popeye did the voice. I don't know if he was aware of Tuvans or anything, but it was like you know a voice, and then a voice an octave lower at the same time. But it's very hard to produce two tones at once, but there's a way to do it. And the Tuvans hipped me to that. It was like, yoo-hoo, olive oil, I bring you some flowers. And then it was like, yoo-hoo, olive oil, I bring you some flowers. Yoo-hoo, olive oil. I bring you some flowers.
Isn't that fabulous?
And it was like, the Sailor Man.
Oh, thank you for indulging me and all of us. Because I've heard you do
I
that
can
probably
barely
like
do it. I
50
can barely
times.
do it.
Oh, don't hurt yourself. I know today's
I'm
probably the probably poor
no, I can
timing.
barely do it. It's not the voice it's not the voice that rips me up. I did that for Fox. It was called The Quest for Pappy. It was Popeye's voyage. And I did it for like 2 days straight. And I was wiped out. I was up in Vancouver and I was like, I had to sleep for a day after I did it.
That's,
But I mean, you do what you do. You just like go in and do it. I'll wreck my throat for art. I don't care.
God knows I've done it. I do love the idea
Yeah.
that Jack Mercer went into this thinking, I'm gonna study tube and throat singing, and then that's how I'm gonna get the job of Popeye. Probably didn't happen, but it's a
No, I
fun
bet
thought.
you. No, of course not. I doubt if anyone even heard of it or knew of it.
No, that's the thing
I mean
too.
that
That's such
that
an
would be
obscure.
really esoteric information. Throat singing.
And I will say this, it is such an obscure piece of information, geographical, cultural information. But I was familiar with tube and throat singing because of my older brother who just studied a lot of linguistics and it's just knowledgeable sort of about everything. So when I first heard you explain that, I was probably 12 or something like that, just fascinated with this whole realm. And I heard you talk about tube and throat
Mhm.
singing, which I had never heard of before, except for my brother. And this is like the most obscure, bizarre thing, but that's why I love that story, because this is the kind of crap that we like think of. This is the kind of stuff that people who are in this business who do cartoons are. I mean, you talk to people like
It's
Jeff
it's
Bennett or
on.
Charlie Adler or Tress McNeil, or
Oh
all of these
yes.
people have their D. Bradley Baker calls it their what does he call it? It's like a trunk show. He says, everyone has their bag of tricks and their signature moves and these incredible cultural mixtures that come from all over, and the technical stuff too on top of that, with manipulating pitch and tone and age. And you're one of the few people who's played a few men who's played a lot of women, uh and that
Yeah.
started probably on the Stern Show, right?
Um. Yeah. These shrieking women. These. I grew up in Boston, and there were a lot of these shrieking, like, out of their mind racist women.
Yeah.
I'd be working at a job, and there would be one, like, and then there was a black coworker, and the woman would go, Whitley left the room and look at me and go, he scares me. And I said, why, Jenny? Why does he scare you? Why?
Oh
Did
god.
you see his arms? They're hanging behind his back and he's dragging them along. I mean, it was like hysterics.
Yeah.
And I thought it was grotesque and coarse and foul, but I also thought that it was hysterically funny because of her it's just the adrenal, going from 0 to 60. So I thought that was a funny voice. And when Stern said, we want to tackle this Marge Shot business, I had that voice. He said, that Boston lady you do? I said, oh yeah. He goes, do that. So
Okay.
it was Stern's idea
That I didn't know. I
to
didn't
use
I
that.
didn't know that Howard Stern was the reason you added the Bostonian accent to that character. But I mean, Marge Shot,
Yeah,
that's
he
one of
just
my
said,
favorite.
who cares where she comes from or what her accent is? Nobody knows what Marge Shot sounds like anyway.
Yeah, exactly. That's
She
exactly.
just sounded like an old, I have a baseball team, but that wouldn't be funny. That would last for about 5 seconds on the radio.
But that's such an important point too,
But this,
because impressions are made to be funny. I mean, and I think there's a lot of famous impressions I hear that are they're loosely based on some particular hook that a person has in their mannerisms, but then the rest is distorted and skewed and expanded upon to make to play up the hilarity of whatever quirks someone has. And if you add something that doesn't, I mean, it's not really, I don't think, to me, an impression is the kind that I enjoy anyway, is particularly about perfection or accuracy. It's a little bit more about, it's about
Mhm.
the humor in it.
Well, it's efficacy, or its impact. Like,
Right.
I mean, people that do dead on impressions, there's a guy running around now, and he's really, really remarkably good. He does political impressions. He does Trump perfectly. He does Mitch McConnell. He's working on Ron DeSantis, and
What's his name?
he's kind of like his name is Matt Friend, and I've seen his videos, and I go, it's gonna come to the point where, I mean, he has material. It's funny. He just doesn't do an impression and just sit there and go, "What do you think of that?" I mean, he has very funny material, and he's wiry, and it's great. But years ago, when I was growing up, there was a guy named Von Meter, and his specialty was doing President Kennedy. And then when Kennedy got assassinated, Von Meter's career just disintegrated. And so the thing is yes, it's great to be able to do impressions, but you have to create something of your own.
Yeah.
You really do. And you have to commit to it the same way you would commit to mimicking somebody. You have to believe that it's worthwhile, and you hop into a character and you take it for a spin, you drive it around the block, and you just see what you come up with. And you'd be surprised. Like, even a bad impression is a voice no one's ever heard before. So you can use bad impressions in cartoons. Like, if someone says, "What do you think this astronaut should sound like?" And it's like, "Oh, I don't know." And you pull something out of your rear end and run with it and
Yeah.
commit to it. That's what I've always done. I mean, I look for hybridizations of voices. Like, if you take the personality of one actor and the voice of another, and you cold fuse them, or super collide them, or whatever you want to call it, and I would get like amalgamations of characters, just based on slamming two different people together.
Yeah.
And it served pretty well.
Yeah, I know, and I've heard you explain Zoidberg was a combination of George Jessel, right?
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the other actor's name, the other performer. Oh gee,
Oh,
who
his
was it?
name was Lou
Lou
Jacoby. He
Jacoby,
was
of course.
he, from Yiddish theater.
Yeah.
Yiddish theater. He was in movies, of course. He was in. Oh, I used to tell this story about how when I saw the Diary of Anne Frank, I'm watching the movie, and I'm like, I'm starting to laugh, and I go, "Oh, God forbid, what? Why? Jesus, Lord help me, I'm laughing at this." And it wasn't that I was laughing at the story or the horrific nature of it. It's just they hired two comedic actors to play the lead roles. Like, Ed Wynn played the father of the head of the household, and he said, "Here all along, we thought it was the rats, and it was you, Buddy." And Lou Jacoby played this guy Buddy, Uncle Buddy, who was like taking food that they were stashing, but he was kind of rotund, and he had to eat, and he had like no willpower, and he would be like, "I stole from the children. I stole from the children," and I'm laughing, but I said, "Oh my God, Lord help me," laughing at this. But
Most
they hired
inappropriate
two comedic
casting.
actors to play these.
It's not your fault.
Well, not really, because they were really, really good
Right.
at what they did. They took it totally seriously, and they were both serious performers. But to me, it was funny because I only know those voices from silliness,
Oh
and
yeah.
lots of impressions were based on what Ed Wynn did. I mean, lots of cartoon characters. That was the tack a lot of voice people took. There was a character in Rocky and Bullwinkle named Wrong Way Peach was, and the actor Paul Frees imitated Ed Wynn.
All freeze. Oh
And
my
Dawes
God.
Butler used to do that too. Dawes Butler used to do, for his characters, like Yogi Bear was based on um, Art Carney from the Honeymooners.
Oh my God.
Yogi Bear.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it
Wow.
was like, hey, Ralph, you gotta admit, you know, whether you're rich or poor, it's always nice to have money. And Yogi Bear had that cadence, and that's who Dawes Butler was impersonating.
It's
And it
this is
was a new voice because it was the 50s.
yeah.
And Dawes Butler also used to imitate Jerry Lewis for certain characters, like, little knaves and, like, what are you supposed to be? I'm a knave, you know.
And
Um,
yeah.
it was just crazy that they could do these things, and no one ever put that together, but years later you figure it out when he was doing an impression of Desi Arnaz for Baba Louie.
Just
Hey, Quickstra, you know, hey, Quickstra, I think, you know,
yeah.
it's just very funny that he did that.
I'm tracking lots of golden nuggets of wisdom here for young actors and newer actors because I think first of all what's extremely important that you said that I hope people really take home with them is that you do have to find your own thing. And that's true for any performer in any situation. I mean, you can certainly put it in the context of coming up with characters, but if you're a performer of any kind, if I just started doing stand up, and I think one of the most obvious things is you really can't don't aim to be a worse version of somebody else. You're not going to be a better version of somebody who's already proudly being themselves. But you can
That's right.
you can borrow and steal from whoever, and you can modify and change and find out how it works and lives inside of you. What do you do? What is your unique trunk show, to steal from Dee Baker again? Um, so it's interesting how you've done so many I mean, it's not unique in this business. There's so many modified impressions that become characters, and Stimpy from Ren and Stimpy as Larry Fine is one of my favorite examples, and that cracks me up when
Well,
you do Larry Fine more than anything.
he, nobody paid attention to him in the Stooges. Everybody focused on Curly or Moe, and Moe would be beating up Curly. But if you look to the side of the screen, which I always did because I love periphery, I'm fascinated by periphery. And, Larry would be just like chewing up scenery and everything. And the little that he said always cracked me up, even if it was like, be careful, Mo.
Yeah,
It's just, he had this bad plumbing. He was from Philly, and I think a lot of those actors like, oh gosh, what's his name? George O'Hanlon. I think he was from Philly,
George.
and he
Oh
played
yeah,
George Jetson,
yeah, of
and
course.
he had that kind of added idol, and Larry was like, hey Mo, you put too much tinsel in the tree. And then George Jetson was like, oh, come on, Janie, honey, the cleaners are 500 miles away. It'll take an extra 5 minutes just to get there. He had that added idol thing.
Yeah, yeah, he did. He was very congested sounding all the time. Which I hadn't really thought of, but dude, this is the great thing. It's like we're seeing how everything is connected. All of these characters and these voice and these sounds, and going back, falling in love with music. And I know you said you were really, I mean, you had high dreams for yourself as a guitar player, right? Like for a long time, that was really your bar that you set for yourself in terms of your career.
Well, I came out of the gate. And I was really good
Yeah,
for somebody that just started out, and I started playing in bands with other people around 1966, or played with other players. I used to run around with guitars, no cases. We'd be out in the winter, taking our guitars to each other's houses, and
just jamming.
nothing mattered. It was just anything goes.
Yeah,
And
it's best.
one time my friend had a big tape recorder. It was a Wallen Sack tape recorder, and had this green um, eye that would light up when it detected sound, and it looked like a cat's eye, a green cat's eye. And we used to take a microphone from that tape recorder and stick it into the hole of the guitar on the acoustic, and then suddenly you had an electric guitar. and before we could get our hands on electric guitars, that was just a wet dream. Oh,
Yeah.
you're kidding me! I have a chance to get a solid body electric. That was like over the hills and far away in like your ability to have things.
But the fact that you had that resourcefulness and desire and curiosity to do that is, I think, speaks a lot about how you transitioned from music to radio to doing cartoons. You have this very innovative way about you, and how you discover all these quirky little things that people don't think of. And I think it's like that it factor. That's what it's very fascinating to me. So how did you go from playing a guitar and you were in Boston playing guitar, right? That was how you started out. Is that correct?
Yes.
So how did
Um,
you eventually get to New York? What led you there?
well, I played guitar in bands for a long time. They were mostly like cover bands. Didn't play original music except for one band, and we had a record producer interested in us, and suddenly everybody's head exploded. With I don't know, like self-interest and all these other destructive things, and the band broke up, or I broke up the band on stage. I went nuts on stage one night and just started playing over everybody and giving everybody the finger while I did it.
Bang your
I was
trumpet a
a I
couple
was a
times.
bad little I was a bad little boy. And and so they threw me out, but they never went anywhere. And I just didn't know where on earth was going to be a place for me. I mean, okay, I played in a band. I guess I'll pick up the guitar and go back out. And I started singing a whole lot more. And I was troubled with polyps. They
Familiar.
just like, because I overdid it. I overdid my voice all the time. I sang sharp. And the reason for that is I had so much power that it would stretch the vocal cords, and it was more than they could handle. So your voice rises in pitch a little bit.
Right.
Um, it's like when you're yelling, your voice kind of goes up in pitch.
Yep.
So, I mean, just dealing with stuff like that. I always had some kind of problem with my throat. Um, I remember I got my throat blessed in Detroit. It was the Feast of St. Blaise, and they'd take a couple of holy beeswax candles and put them under your throat and recite some ooga booga. And but I just remember that there was a patron saint of throats.
That's hilarious. So was it sort of a
Yeah,
moment of giving up on music then? I mean, what led you though to go?
yeah,
So yeah, that was it.
yeah. I finally I had it, with like banging my head against the wall and chasing down the gigs, and you had to go to Vermont, and then disco came out and put us all out of business.
All right.
And they were taking out they were taking the clubs apart and putting in giant dance floors and lights and giant speakers and mirror balls and everything. And that was it. Live music was finished, unless you wanted to travel to great distances where they actually still had clubs with live music. But that was way out in the sticks and stuff where nobody cared about disco. But that was it. And, but it's so funny because during that whole time, I knew the guys in Aerosmith because they came from Boston. We had the same agent, and the agent said to me one time, "You got to go see this band that I'm managing. They're out in Revere and they're playing at a club." And I said, "Okay." And I go out, and I see these guys on stage banging into each other, and they were all out of tune, and I didn't get it, and I said to my friend, "These guys are never gonna make it. What kind of a name is Aerosmith anyway?"
That's I remember Charlie Adler told a story that this reminds me of it, of when someone showed him the Village People for the first time ever. He said, "What the hell is this? This ain't gonna go anywhere."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like one of my early Halloween parties.
Yeah. Right,
But
exactly.
it's funny. I went like from just not playing music in groups anymore, and I started to go to a couple of stand-up nights in Boston. This is like in 1978, I think. There was a club. It was a Chinese restaurant, and it was called the Ding Ho. And early comedians that were legends like Barry Crimmins and Steve Sweeney and Lenny Clark and Boston guys. They played there, and they welcomed me. Except I didn't know what I was doing. I just used to go up and throw shit against the wall, and hopefully something would stick. And some nights it would be great, and other nights, be horrifyingly bad because you have to have an act. Um, but I just never did. I
I,
just never could get that together.
this is
But
again where
stand up
you
is really hard.
these incredible parallels that I'm experiencing because I mean I went up and tried improv for the first time, I don't know, a week and a half ago, and I had nothing prepared, and I'm not I just am more comfortable improvising. I'm more comfortable riffing. Um it's just because it's a skill you have to learn to write and act, and it's not one that I've necessarily developed at this point. But so you said something too that's I'm going back and forth because I'm finding a lot of connection here. What you said about when you were falling out of music and sort of transitioning in this transitional period of your life where you felt kind of lost and that you didn't really feel like you fit in into any particular place or where you were supposed to be. First of all, I think that that's another common thread that I've heard many people who are now making fantastic livings doing cartoons experienced at one point or another. It's a
Mhm.
career that most people don't recognize as being a career. Now that's changing a little bit because of these conventions and how prevalent everything is online, and celebrity influence, of course. But
Yes,
certainly as a child I never once considered the possibility of growing up and doing cartoons, until I discovered people like you on YouTube and these interviews, which is why I like to peel back the curtain because people just love this stuff. But this feeling of not really having I had that same thing. I mean, as a kid I was always making movies and doing weird characters and improving and doing, just being the class clown at family gatherings and dinner parties, and making people confused. But there's something about this. I just think it's
that's
so
where everything
kismet.
comes.
Yeah, go on.
No, I was just going to say, that's where everything comes from.
Yeah,
It's like Hollywood is made up of the town weirdos of every town everywhere. It's
yeah,
like the town weirdo had to leave and go to Mecca, and
yeah.
meet all the other town weirdos, and it's called Hollywood. Um, that's basically what it was. It's like, you grow up in the workaday world, and it's people resented you because they just thought, oh, what do you mean this isn't good enough for you? We're not good enough for you if you had any ambition, and they took it personally
It's true.
and gave you a hard time. Gave
That's
you a
true.
hard time.
Yeah, places and people can hold you back. I mean, you do. I think it does take a certain kind of bravery and a certain kind of self-certainty to say, I want more for myself, to say I'm going to go somewhere else.
That's
I'm going to
right.
take a risk. I want to leave. Yeah, it's easy to find complacency and comfort, and certain people will think negatively of you for wanting more than that or to go expand outside of that. I think that's a very salient point. And, did you
Well,
experience that because you moved to New York before moving to LA, and then you moved I mean, what was that like?
I was still coming up in Boston, and I realized that doing stand up, I realized that there were people that had 2 or 3 HBO specials, and still nobody knew who they were. And I thought, well, there's something inherently wrong with that. So I got into morning radio quite by accident in Boston, and it was the place for me. It was where I needed to be, in front of a microphone, just like when I was 4 years old, and we sent away for a little round pin microphone, and it sat in front of me, and it didn't work, but I didn't care because I was enamored with the thing. I just
Yeah,
thought, this this is like a portal to another world, this thing.
Yeah.
And then, there I was working in radio in Boston for a bunch of years. And then I moved to New York and I started working with Howard Stern. Um, and that's when I started auditioning for, you know, big time commercial stuff. That was where you went,
Yeah.
the big ad houses like BBD and O and J. Walter Thompson, all these big ad houses on Madison Avenue. And I auditioned for everything. I went up for everything. Excuse me. And I started getting things, and I realized, you know what? It's the velocity is adding up with these gigs. And I said, I'm still in the workaday world. I still have to punch a clock. I still have to answer to some myopic, niggling little program director, at the radio station, whose ideas were, I need 3 promos that say we played 20 songs in a row, or you win $20,000 or some shit like that, you know. And they played, they said, God, it was based on the Arbitron books. It's like, every Thursday was like the big money giveaway, or one Thursday a month it was always on a Thursday, because that's when the ratings books closed. So they were, you're literally trying to buy the audience.
Right.
Yeah, they were so, like, I don't know. It just was crazy. And they took it so seriously, like the classic rock station in New York. The disc jockeys were, they were just rock lovers that happened to get on the radio at an early point before everybody else. And but they acted like big deals. And I used to say to myself, these guys are like curators in a museum. You didn't create the statues, you just dust them,
Yeah.
and now here's Cream. And then you were in the studio helping Eric Clapton create the solo for Sunshine of Your Love. And these
Yeah.
guys just acted like big stars. And I said, they don't do anything. What do you talk for 3 hours and 57 minutes a day, for Christ's sakes, if that?
Yeah.
And then they had a calendar, and the promotion departments are trying to make a big deal out of classic rock, because it was trying to make shit shine. It was oldies, but they were like, oh, classic rock. And the calendars would have the dates on, the months, and they would name them accordingly, like Rocktober, Rollvember. And I look at the calendar at the station, and I said, there was a disc jockey named Dave Herman. And I said, Dave, Rocktober? And he goes, that was ours, in all seriousness. Like he split the fucking atom
Oh
or something.
God.
And, and I said, I don't belong here either. I got to get out of here. I'm a progressive, for Christ's sakes.
That's fantastic.
And these guys were just flies in amber that populated those stations.
This is thrilling to me, though, to hear all of this, to hear about the adventures, the many adventures you had before getting to your. I mean, I know you pretty well known for the Howard Stern show, but at this point, I mean, you've got to probably be Futurama and Ren and Stimpy and all the '90s Nickelodeon stuff. That's got to be, the biggest claim to your fame now, at least for the audiences that you see. And I'm going all over the place because you're making me think of so many different things. And one thing I was going to ask you was, did you ever actually, as a child or a young adult, think you wanted to be an actor? Like, was that an early goal for you in any way, or was it really just this sort of kind of serendipitous experience of being a musician and then kind of falling in love with the microphone, which I have as well, as I did as a kid? Did you ever have that thought of, I want to do plays, or I want to be in a movie, or anything like that?
Let's see. I was in plays in school, in grade school, and I liked it, except and I got bit by the acting bug in a different way, and it turned out to be voice acting. I'm perfectly happy to be doing what I'm doing. I've been on TV shows, and where you wait in your trailer all day long, and you come out and you do 7 minutes worth of something on a TV show, and that's that. nobody makes any money unless you're the star of the show. The second banana doesn't make big money. So here I am, and my wife was pushing me to get into like sitcoms and stuff like that. I said, I don't want to. I have no interest in that stuff. I love doing what I'm doing. And
Yeah.
but oh God, I'm trying to think what else was going on at the time in radio. Yeah, so I was ready to get out of there, and I was auditioning, and I auditioned for a show, Ren and Stimpy. Nickelodeon was going to do a 3 cartoon animated block on Sunday mornings, and so I got the roles of 2 of the show's characters. One was Ren and Stimpy, and one was Doug. And Nickelodeon was very sharp, very smart, and I enjoyed doing those. I really had a good time. And I was running around New York and flying back and forth to California a couple days a week to do Ren and Stimpy, and then I'd be back on the Stern Show. So it wasn't long for me before I got out of radio. I couldn't handle the pace,
Well, the
and plus
pay, yeah.
it wasn't doing anything for me.
I mean, I think from my understanding, and I've never worked in radio. My understanding is the culture and the environment of it can be a little cutthroat and difficult in any case, just generally speaking. And obviously in the Stern room, there's a certain kind of environment that is just, it's sink or swim, I think.
Well, yeah, it was um, the Stern Show. Howard was an anomaly, I mean, he just basically did what he wanted, and he was an innovator. And I've worked with innovators, and they're the people who knock down doors with no apologies.
Yeah.
In search of new things, and totally willing to fail in the course of it, but failure doesn't define their careers. It's like what they found, what they discovered, the discovery process. Of trying things, trying new, that'll never work. You never wanted to hear those words from some naysayer. No, that won't work. It's like, get out of here.
No.
I don't want to hear that.
That
Impossible. Everything works.
and that's another extra golden wisdom nugget, is that, and you've said before that the people who do this kind of work are by and large fearless, and I think there's so much truth to
Yeah.
that. This is not a career where you can be inhibited. Everyone has anxiety to some degree. Everyone gets nervous or stressed, but you can't be
Sure.
afraid. You can't be afraid of letting yourself be a fool or
No.
freaking people out or going too far. If you have that, you're probably not, you have to get rid of that hindrance, I think.
Well, the last thing that's on your mind when you're in the middle of a performance is how cool you look.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I wonder if I look cool doing this. I mean, that doesn't even enter into your mind, and that borders on the whole celebrity thing where they bring in celebrities to do voices and stuff, and you get hired to do your one great and glorious voice and play different characters with that same voice. And to me, that's like doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
It's just it's just they think that it puts asses in the seats, and it doesn't, because people aren't stupid. They know what they hear, they know what they see, and they know the difference between something that's being shoved down their throat and something that absolutely turns them on and makes them sit up and bark like Lassie.
Yeah.
When they hear it or see it.
Yes, and there have been hit movies without hit animated movies without celebrity talent. Like Jimmy Neutron which spawned a series, was a huge hit in the box office. And I think it was nominated for Best Animated Picture at the Oscars. They weren't advertising with celebrity at all. It was just a great movie with great actors.
Yeah. They I was in that movie, I think. Yeah, I was.
Oh
I
yeah,
did something.
didn't
I
you do
can't
that
remember
sort of
what.
like that oh god, this sort of very like flamboyant sort of, was it an alien or something?
Oh no, he was like a talent agent or something.
Oh yeah, all right. That's,
Yeah, his name was Koki Shimatsu.
oh yeah. Now I
You're
remember.
gonna be a superstar. A superstar. That's what you're gonna be. You're gonna be a superstar.
That was another show I grew up watching, and it's a great one. But
Yeah, I did lots of those shows. I almost forgot about that. Um, I was on Teenage Robot.
oh,
You
My
know, a lot
Life
of
as a
these
Teenage
shows
Robot.
yeah, a lot of these shows where I wasn't like where I didn't have a starring role, where I would just come running in off the street and go in and say, "What am I doing? Who am I doing?"
Yeah,
You know, I don't tend to remember those. They're not on the forefront of my mind, but I
that
was there. I did them.
that's a lot of this work too, though, is ancillary characters, and that's the beautiful thing about voiceover is you can go in and do one line and get paid scale plus 10, and then go and record something else and get paid scale plus 10 for 2 lines or whatever. And that's a lot. That's how people make careers is from doing
Yes.
one-offs. And that going back to celebrity. It's not about it. I mean, it's not about fame or notoriety. This is just it's I think a very pure form of art, which is why so many people are really attracted to cartoons now as a way of making a living.
Yeah, the way that you have to craft something that transcends um the medium itself. That's the goal, is to make a character that's so relatable, or characters, hopefully,
Yeah,
that's relatable. Something about the character rings true to just about everybody, and it's very hard to come up with that delicate dance, that tightrope to walk.
yeah,
But once you do, it's like people have found something that gives them pleasure and laughter and joy. And
that's the thing.
that was the best part of it. Like, celebrities are not my heroes. I say that all the time. They're just not.
No,
Um, you can be a celebrity for farting the national anthem now. It's like, what's the diff? People are celebrities for being some big lipped housewife on some phony baloney reality show. you know, I'm a celebrity. And it's like, okay, good,
it's true.
keep it. So artists were always my heroes, people that just spring out of nowhere, can see and hear things that don't even exist yet, and then make them true, make it so.
Yeah,
And years ago, producers used to rely on voiceover people to come in, and it was all about alchemy. They'd say, "Listen, we got this bar of lead on the table, and we need you to turn it to gold. You think you can do that?" Yep, no problem. And
yeah,
and it was like you had to create something that would outlast a celebrity's fame, something that would be evergreen. Otherwise, the voice art goes down the drain. It's dead. If you keep hiring celebrities that just come in and they leave the lead bar on the table and they just go, "Where's my $20 million?"
yeah. That's the thing, and that's
Yeah.
your
So that's
part of your job is creating cultural icons too. That's what you do. I mean, you have that alchemy where you get a piece of paper and you have to turn that into a living, breathing soul. And exactly, and something that people relate to, and that's why God, or I mean, I think Ren and Stimpy came out. What was it? 22, 32 years ago,
31,
31 years
31
ago.
years ago.
And people still, I mean, I'm sure you hear about it every single convention all the time and how much those characters mean to you. How much they mean to,
Yes.
to
Um,
whoever is coming up to you.
Doing that show was the agony and the ecstasy because of the problematic nature of the guy that, allegedly created the show. I mean, it was created by a team of people, different people.
Right.
Uh, but I mean, he was the ringleader.
Yeah.
And oops, my phone's got low battery.
Uh-oh. Well, we can wrap up soon, and we've already been talking
No,
for
no, we don't
almost an
have to.
hour.
I'm going to plug it in.
All right. Okay.
I'm sorry.
No,
Uh,
you're good. This is all from the hip. I can't believe we've already been talking for almost an hour. Don't let me keep you too long.
no, let's see. Yeah, but that I thought it was a great, great show because it had a retro feel to it. It sort of looked like the old Hanna-Barbera stuff, with the big, thick outlines and retro what America was like in the 50s, with the nice
Yeah.
ranch style house and the pine tree next to it. And, everything was just hunky dory. Everything was, all happy. And we were out of a war, and everybody was happy. It was baby boom time, 50s.
Yeah.
And there was a style that came out of that time. And when it was revisited, it was perfect. It was a perfect place to go with two psychotic characters um, in this happy-go-lucky world where the musical themes were blithe and capricious, and then you got these crazy, insane characters. Um, and I loved it. I loved it. And originally, I was supposed to do both voices on that show when John Kay took me over to Nickelodeon, and it was in New York City, and we were in a closet making a tape before he went into a meeting with the women at Nickelodeon. We were in a closet with a broomstick with a mic on it.
Fantastic.
It was
Show
just right out
business.
of Central Casting. It was total 1930s madcap stuff, and I had the paper up close to me, and we're like, and I'm reading both characters and recorded it, and then he goes, okay, and then he goes into the meeting, and he came out later and he goes, congratulations, what you did, helped sell the show. And I said, oh, great. But it turns out that he wanted to do the Ren character, and I didn't give a shit. I didn't give a fat frog's ass who did what, because I had a job.
Yeah, you're
I was
working.
like, great,
Done.
great. I'm working. I'm doing a cartoon. This is what I think I always wanted to do. But I mean, people don't know that I was supposed to do both voices. And for years, people were calling me names and backstabber. And it was like, I wasn't his partner. I was a hired gun, for Christ's sakes, just like I am to this very day.
Yeah, exactly.
But
That's the thing
but
too.
he,
Some people think you have more ownership or more authority or involvement. I mean, you as an actor, you don't people often give you more credit than the authority you actually have, just from a practical
yeah,
sense.
I had to fight so many people on my own website, these malcontents and schmoes, attacking me. But it was good practice because I can be pretty venomous in print.
That's good. It's an
I used to
important
shoot
skill.
them out of the sky like Icarus and Daedalus. You're not even going to make it to the sun. I'm going to shoot you out of the sky.
That's very ambitious.
Yes, I know. What a noble thing to do is
It's
beat the
extremely
crap out of
noble.
people on the internet.
Happy Memorial Day.
Yeah,
Um,
happy Memorial Day.
um, I I am curious, and I know we're going all over the place, and I do want to be respectful of your time, but I'm just so curious how you got the audition for Ren and Stimpy and Doug. Was it just a normal opportunity through your agent, or was there some kind of connection that led you to get those two shows?
Um, let's see. For Ren and Stimpy, I had done a show in 1989 called Beanie and Cecil for Geek,
Oh,
DIC,
yeah, yeah,
and
Dick, right?
ABC Television, and um, and they hired the animator John Crisalucci to head the production,
I see.
and it lasted for about 5 or 6 episodes, which is his calling card. I mean, he can only do stuff for about 5 or 6 episodes, and then he blows his foot off. Self-destructs,
Yeah,
whatever his problem was, and so he remembered me from that outing. I played Cecil, the seasick sea serpent,
was
and he
Maurice
called
LaMarche
me up
also
when he
on
had a
that?
new project. What's that?
Sorry, was Maurice LaMarche also on Beanie and Cecil, right?
Yes, he was
Yeah, okay,
also on that.
gotcha.
That's kind of where I met Maurice.
Okay,
And he did a character called Dishonest John, and we had a lot of fun, and it was great. And the woman that was directing us was Marsha Goodman, and she was just one of God's good people.
yep,
She understood us. She understood talent, and very classy. um and so, as an offshoot, I got hired for Ren and Stimpy because John had another project. And then after about a season or so, he got fired for non-delivery of episodes and going over budget, and just, kind of like leaving a trail of mayhem wherever he went. And they weren't having it. And so they fired him. And, they asked me, they said, weren't you supposed to do both voices originally? And they found my original tape. And they said, you want to do it? And I said, sure. I mean, uh, I didn't worry about that. I mean, he called me up screaming and yelling at me. And, he called up everybody on the show. Poor Gary Owens,
Oh my
played
God,
Powdered
Gary
Toast Man. He
Owens.
called him up and screaming at him, "You're fucking rich. You don't need to do this show." He just thought that he was going to take everybody with him. But then he started working on me because he said, "They can do the show without me, but they'll never do it without you." And he wanted to use me to hit Nickelodeon over the head, so that they would hire him back. Using me to fight his battles.
Well,
Big Mister Man.
I'm very glad you stuck to it, because Ren and Stimpy is probably, I mean, it was one of the biggest influences of me, I think, in my life. Because I watched that at like age
Wow.
3, we're talking, and the humor in that show was so chaotic and aggressive that it really informed my own sensibilities, which aren't very sensible. And
Look what we
I'm
got
just
out
very
of the whole thing. We got you. We got people like you. I mean, if you can never play it small when you're doing anything, don't play it small.
no,
Play it
that's
big,
another nugget.
because you'll never inspire anyone else if you don't.
Yeah.
You have to go for it, and you have to shine. Otherwise, other people won't be affected by it. They'll never say, "Oh, I want to do that." No, when they see something take off like a rocket and they want to follow it and wonder the mystery of it, and that's what brings other people to the table, and they themselves can become innovators, if they're fit for it or whatever, if they're prepared for it. But you want that to continue on and on and on.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. And Charlie Adler, who is my forever teacher, and has been hugely helpful to me, always says there is no safety. And I think that that's a very similar point. It's there isn't. It's not about there's no way to play it safe and to have an impact.
No, he's right. Charlie is one of my heroes too,
I mean, yeah.
and a good friend, and I've known him for a really long time. Yeah, there is no safety, because if you went into battle, you went into war, and you were assured that there was safety, you'd get blown to bits in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
The idea that there's no safety keeps you on your toes. It keeps you ready and willing and able for anything that comes flying at you at the speed of sound, anything. And that's your strong suit, really, is the fact that there's no safety, and you have to be fearless. You have to be willing to put your head in the lion's mouth and walk a tightrope.
Yeah.
You have to. Otherwise, there's nothing to be gained, nothing real.
When you can get to the point where you're genuinely comfortable breaking the rules, there's a great freedom in that. I mean, when you can really be okay with making a fool of yourself and not doing it right, then you're free. Then you can just play, and you can push the limits of whatever you think exists, and find out just how much more.
Yeah,
like on
Futurama, I mean, you got to honor the words. The writers are just, they're golden. They're so great. But every now and then they'll go, "Do you have any ideas? Do you want to try something?" And I always have something to offer, and whether it winds up on the floor or not, it's up to them. But they love it that you want to offer more than you're bringing to the table.
Absolutely.
And you do so at their invite. But breaking the rules, I mean, it's a show that kind of breaks rules, like comedy rules. I mean, the writing is a different approach to comedy.
Oh, absolutely.
And the same with Disenchantment. There's like, when you start thinking about rules, you start building a box that you're going to keep yourself in. You don't look for parameters,
Why would you?
You just
Why would
don't.
you try to limit yourself?
Well, you want to be ethereal. You want to be as pure as you can be, as pure as another element that exists on Earth. You're one of them, and you have your use. You have your place.
This is I hope everyone can really hear that and take that to heart for themselves individually. It's very important, and I'm glad you mentioned Futurama because I think that I would be remiss, and I could talk for hours, and there's so many things I could touch on that we haven't, but I would be remiss, first of all, if I didn't keep it somewhat reasonably length, and also if I didn't mention Futurama, which is coming back. And
Mhm.
everyone should be very excited about that. If you didn't know, now
I'm
you
excited.
know. What are you allowed to share, if anything, about that?
I'm allowed to share that you won't be disappointed.
Great. That's all we need. That's all we need.
Yeah, I mean, there's that, and Ren and Stimpy is coming back, so I'm screaming and yelling like I did 31 years ago.
And
Uh,
then
you
that's
know,
why your voice is so hurt.
well, that's not the real reason.
Yeah.
It's just I have little problems come and go, and it's probably from having this wide variety of stuff that I do, and the throat's like, you're not supposed to beat the shit out of me like that. And I was like, yeah, but I gotta do it. I have to work. Um, I wouldn't worry about it. If anybody's worried about it, I would not worry about it.
No, I don't think people are worried. I think people are excited. I know I am. So look out for Ren and Stimpy and Futurama both coming back. Two of my personal favorite shows. I can't help but geek out about it. And Billy, thank you so much. I really could talk to
Thank
you for
you,
hours, and I have
Boone.
so there's just, I
We'll
mean, we
talk
could go
again.
on and on. We will. Yeah, we'll have to do
Yeah,
some
to
sort
be
of part two.
continued. Yeah, to be continued. We could do that,
I would love that.
and I'd be happy to do it. And I'm so glad you got a hold of me.
I am so glad too, and I'm so glad I got to meet you. You've been just so very, very wonderful, and what an honor. I mean, I have to say, to get slightly unprofessional, just to, I was a 12-year-old kid who was just, you were my hero, and so to be able to be here and interview you, it means a great deal to me. And the fact that you're so willing and so available to people who look up to you and people who are interested in what you do. I mean, you never ever talk down to anyone. You look everyone right at eye level and are utterly supportive and loving and project joy and illuminate just goodness. Just I mean,
No,
really.
thank
So
you.
thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll chat soon.
Absolutely.
And we'll talk about what these here cartoons look like when they're out there.
Yes, I can't wait. And we'll definitely do another one of these and we'll keep it going. So thank you so much,
Okay.
Billy.
Thank you. Big love.
Yes, have a great rest of your Memorial Day, and
I
thank you
will.
everyone for watching.